The apartment was silent until Emma's scream tore through the air, raw and filled with anguish. She clutched her son Noah close, her body trembling as if the walls themselves might collapse under the weight of betrayal. David's face twisted with anger as he stormed past, his hand slamming the door with such force it rattled the windows. The sirens outside echoed faintly, a cruel reminder of chaos waiting to intrude. Emma whispered, "You will not take him from me," though her voice quivered. Noah's small arms wrapped around her neck, his innocent eyes reflecting fear he couldn't yet name. The betrayal burned in her chest, scorching the last fragments of trust she once had. Her heart pounded as every thought spiraled into the unknown, her breath sharp and uneven. The apartment, once their sanctuary, now felt poisoned by his shadow. Why now, she thought, clinging to her child like a lifeline. David's absence left a void more suffocating than his presence. Her tears blurred her vision, but resolve began to flicker beneath the fear. This was no longer just about her pain. It was about Noah, about survival, and about a fight that had just begun. Emma sat on the couch long after David's footsteps faded, the silence pressing down like a heavy weight. She held Noah tightly, his small breaths warm against her neck. I promise you," she whispered, "I'll never let him take you." The room smelled faintly of rain and dust, every corner echoing with memory. She thought of the years she had sacrificed, the nights working overtime, the meals skipped so Noah never went without. It had all been for him, yet here she was, threatened with losing everything. Noah stirred and asked softly, "Mom, are we safe?" Emma kissed his forehead, her tears brushing his skin. "Yes, baby, we're safe," she said, though doubt gnawed at her. The lamp flickered, shadows bending across the walls like ghosts of the past. Emma leaned her head back, exhaustion pulling at her, but the fire of resolve burned faintly inside. She knew this night was only the beginning, and the fight ahead would demand everything she had left. The hours crawled by, every sound outside, making Emma flinch. She tucked Noah into bed, smoothing his curls as he whispered, "Don't leave me, Mom." Her heart broke, but she smiled. "I'm right here." She sat at his bedside, watching his eyes flutter shut, the innocence of sleep shielding him from reality. Alone in the quiet, her mind replayed David's rage, the venom in his eyes, the way he slammed the door as though sealing her fate. She pressed her hand against the wall, steadying herself against the ache of fear. Shadows pooled around her, yet the glow of Noah's nightlight reminded her why she couldn't falter. Emma whispered to herself, "This is my fight now." The room felt like a battlefield in disguise, its calmness masking the storm ahead. The night stretched endlessly, each second a reminder of the war that awaited her outside the fragile walls of her home. Emma paced the kitchen, her bare feet tapping against the cold tile floor. She gripped her phone, scrolling through numbers she no longer trusted to call. Friends had faded when life grew too hard, and family was fractured long ago. Her reflection in the window stared back, tired eyes hollow with sleepless nights. She muttered, "I can't do this alone," though she already knew she had no choice. The refrigerator hummed, mocking her with its monotone calmness. She thought of the court papers David had hinted at, the custody threat looming like thunder in her mind. Her chest tightened, breath uneven as panic pressed against her ribs. Emma placed both hands on the counter, grounding herself with a silent prayer. One step at a time, she told herself, the words fragile yet determined. Tonight was fear. Tomorrow would be the start of her fight. The storm outside grew heavier, raindrops hammering against the glass like a relentless warning. Emma sat at the table, her head in her hands, as the weight of years pressed onto her shoulders. Every sacrifice, every silent tear, every choice she made to protect Noah led her to this fragile moment. She thought of David's betrayal, not just tonight but all the nights before, the way he left her to carry their world alone. Yet here he was, trying to take the only thing that mattered. Emma lifted her head, eyes glistening, her breath sharp but steady. She whispered, "You won't win." The determination startled even her, a spark of strength flickering beneath her grief. Lightning illuminated the room, shadows leaping across the walls like specters. Tomorrow would bring uncertainty, but tonight she vowed never to surrender. The morning light crept through the blinds, casting faint stripes across Emma's weary face. She stood in the kitchen, the sound of coffee brewing unable to drown out the echo of David's threats. Noah padded in, clutching his stuffed bear, his voice soft. "Are you okay, Mom?" Emma forced a smile, bending down to kiss his forehead. "I'm fine," she lied, her chest heavy with fear. Every corner of the apartment reminded her of broken promises, of how fragile their life had become. She thought of the custody papers David would surely file, and dread gripped her spine. Noah's eyes, wide and innocent, carried a question he couldn't put into words. "Will we still be together?" Emma squeezed his hand tightly, whispering, "I'll never let anyone take you away." The smell of coffee filled the room, but instead of comfort, it only reminded her of mornings that once felt normal. Those days were gone. This was survival now. Later that morning, Emma hurried through crowded streets toward her office, her nerves frayed. She clutched her bag tightly, every step weighed down by the fear of losing her job. David's threats echoed in her mind, and now her boss's warning emails pressed on her chest. "If I lose this," she whispered, "we lose everything." Inside the office, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, merciless and cold. Her boss barely looked at her, voice clipped as he said, "Late again, Emma, this can't continue." Shame burned in her cheeks, but she bit her tongue. She couldn't afford to argue. Her desk felt like a prison, paperwork piling higher as whispers spread among coworkers. She buried herself in tasks, hands trembling with exhaustion. The computer screen blurred through tears she refused to let fall. This was another battlefield, one she couldn't escape. Losing her job meant losing the roof over Noah's head. She had to endure. That evening, Emma sat at the edge of Noah's bed as he hugged his bear close, his small voice breaking the silence. "What if Dad takes me away?" The words pierced deeper than any of David's threats. Emma's throat tightened, but she smoothed Noah's curls with trembling fingers. "He won't," she said, though her own fear screamed otherwise. His wide eyes shimmered with tears, and she felt her heart shatter into pieces too small to mend. She pulled him close, breathing in the scent of soap and innocence, praying it would be enough to silence his fear. Outside, the rain tapped steadily against the window, like a ticking clock counting down to the storm ahead. Emma kissed his cheek softly, whispering, "You're my whole world, Noah. I'll protect you no matter what." His eyelids grew heavy, but his grip on her hand never loosened. The weight of his trust became her armor. Exhaustion tugged at Emma, but she found herself dialing Sarah's number, the only friend who had stayed through the chaos. Sarah's voice was steady, a lifeline in the storm. "You can't face this alone, Emma," she said firmly. Emma hesitated, staring at the shadows stretching across her living room floor. "I don't want to burden anyone," she whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah countered, "You're not a burden. You're a mother protecting her child, and you need help." Tears slipped down Emma's cheeks as silence filled the space between them. Sarah's words carved through her fear, reminding her she wasn't as alone as she thought. She exhaled shakily and said, "I'm terrified, Sarah." Her friend's reply was simple but resolute. "Then let me be terrified with you." For the first time in days, Emma's chest loosened slightly. The fight ahead was still hers, but now she wasn't entirely without support. The next day brought no relief. Emma stood at the courthouse steps, clutching Noah's small hand as fear swirled in her chest. David was already inside, waiting with smug certainty. Emma's legs felt heavy, but Noah squeezed her hand, grounding her. She forced her breath steady, whispering, "Well, get through this." The courthouse loomed tall, its gray stone walls cold and unyielding. Every step inside felt like walking into enemy territory. The echo of her heels on the marble floor seemed louder than her heartbeat. Strangers rushed past, but Emma saw only Noah, the fragile reason behind her courage. She swallowed her fear, straightened her shoulders, and pushed the door open. Whatever storm awaited, she would not let David's lies define her. This was no longer about her past, but about her child's future. With each step, she embraced the fight ahead, determined to survive. The courtroom air was thick with tension as Emma sat at the wooden table, her hands clenched in her lap. Across from her, David leaned back with smug confidence, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Emma's heart raced, but she refused to look away. The judge's voice cut through the silence, commanding, "We will begin." Papers rustled, footsteps echoed, and every sound magnified her dread. She thought of Noah waiting at home, his small world depending on her strength. David's gaze met hers, sharp and filled with silent threats, but Emma held her ground. She whispered under her breath, "This isn't over." Her lawyer leaned close, murmuring strategies, but her mind drifted to the promises she made to her son. This wasn't just about legal battles, it was about survival. As the proceedings began, Emma inhaled slowly, steadying her pulse. She had no room left for weakness. Later that evening, Emma returned home drained, only to find Sarah waiting by her door. Sarah's face was filled with concern, but her words carried a weight Emma hadn't expected. "There's something you should know about David," she said quietly. Emma froze, fear prickling down her spine. Sarah hesitated, then confessed, "I knew about his plan months ago. I didn't tell you because I thought he wouldn't go through with it." The betrayal stung sharper than a blade. Emma's eyes narrowed as anger mixed with heartbreak. "You let me walk blind into this," she whispered. Sarah's voice cracked as she pleaded, "I was trying to protect you." But Emma turned away, unable to process the wound carved by someone she trusted most. The apartment felt colder than ever. Trust was gone, and now the circle around her grew smaller. Emma collapsed onto the couch after Sarah left, her body trembling. Her mind replayed every word, every hidden truth, every reminder that betrayal never came just once. Tears blurred her vision, her chest heaving as she whispered, "Why does everyone leave me blind?" The walls seemed to close in, shadows stretching longer as the night deepened. She pressed her palms against her face, muffling a sob she couldn't suppress. Memories of David abandoning her years ago collided with Sarah's silence now. Betrayal was a wound that never healed, and tonight it bled fresh. She looked toward Noah's closed bedroom door, her resolve wavering. "I can't break, not in front of him," she said aloud, forcing herself upright. But inside her strength faltered, a storm raging where no one could see. The following afternoon, Emma found herself at a coffee shop, her nerves on edge. Across the table sat Alex, a man she hadn't seen in years. He offered a soft smile, his presence unsettling yet oddly comforting. "I heard about the custody fight," he said, his tone laced with sincerity. Emma shifted uneasily, unsure if she could let anyone close again. "Why now, Alex, after all this time?" she asked. His eyes softened, regret flickering there. "Because I couldn't stay away knowing what you're going through." His words stirred emotions she wasn't ready for, a reminder of how vulnerable she had become. She sipped her coffee, the bitterness matching her turmoil. "I can't afford distractions," she whispered, though part of her longed for someone to share the burden. Alex leaned forward gently. "I'm not here to distract. I'm here if you need me." The moment left Emma conflicted, torn between trust and fear. The night before the next hearing, Emma sat at her desk surrounded by stacks of papers, her hands shaking as she tried to organize them. Every page was a reminder of David's lies, his attempts to paint her as unfit. The words blurred through her exhaustion, but she pressed on. Noah slept soundly in the other room, his soft breathing a fragile comfort. Emma whispered to herself, "I can't let him win." Her chest tightened as fear clashed with determination. She imagined standing before the judge, the weight of her life compressed into arguments on paper. Every scar, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, none of it was written there, yet all of it mattered. She slammed the file shut, whispering fiercely, "I am enough." For the first time in days, her fear trembled beneath the shadow of resolve. The courtroom pulsed with an energy that pressed against Emma's chest as she took her seat once more. David's lawyer rattled off accusations, his voice sharp and deliberate, painting Emma as unstable and unfit. Her stomach clenched as the words cut deeper than any knife. She clasped her trembling hands together, forcing herself not to break in front of the crowd. The judge's neutral gaze felt like judgment itself, every shift of his pen a reminder that her life was being recorded and dissected. Emma stole a glance at David, who smirked as though he had already won, his confidence chilling. Her lawyer leaned close, whispering strategies, but Emma's mind was caught between fury and fear. She thought of Noah, waiting at home, trusting her to protect him. That thought steadied her heartbeat. She whispered to herself, "I will not let him win," as determination sparked in the ashes of despair. Emma's breath shook as she stepped out of the courthouse during recess, the air thick with drizzle. She leaned against the stone wall, closing her eyes to keep from collapsing. Her body ached from the weight of words thrown against her, but she forced her shoulders back. Sarah hurried to her side, umbrella in hand, her voice trembling with concern. "You can't let him get to you," she urged. Emma shook her head, her voice low. "He's twisting everything I've done. He makes me feel like I'm the villain." Sarah gripped her arm, firm and unyielding. "You're not. You're a mother fighting for her child. Don't you dare forget that." Emma inhaled sharply, the cold air biting her lungs, and nodded. Even when her strength felt fractured, she knew she had to stand tall for Noah. The battle was far from over, but retreat was no longer an option. That night, Emma sat on Noah's bed, smoothing his blanket as he stirred in his sleep. His small face was peaceful, untouched by the storm raging around them. She whispered, "I'll never let them take you, my love," her voice breaking under the weight of her vow. The hum of the rain against the window drowned her silent sobs, the shadows in the room creeping longer with each flicker of the nightlight. Emma leaned her head against the bed frame, exhaustion pulling at her eyelids, but fear kept her awake. She remembered David's lies, his cruel tactics meant to destroy her credibility, and anger flared inside her chest. She reached for Noah's hand, gripping it gently as if anchoring herself to what mattered most. "You're my strength," she murmured, her voice a whisper to the darkness. Tomorrow, she would face the storm again, but tonight, she allowed herself one fragile moment of peace beside him. The next morning, Emma walked into her workplace with her heart pounding. Whispers followed her down the corridor, eyes darting away when she glanced around. Her boss called her into the office, his voice clipped and professional. "We need someone reliable. These custody hearings are a distraction." The words stung as he handed her another warning. Emma swallowed hard, keeping her composure. She could feel the walls pressing closer, her world crumbling in pieces. She nodded without argument, though her pride screamed in protest. Walking back to her desk, she caught sight of her reflection in the glass window. Tired eyes, fragile strength, and yet something fierce flickered there. She whispered under her breath, "I'll keep fighting." Even as the world stripped her of security, Emma knew she couldn't afford to stop. The stakes were higher than paychecks. They were about Noah, and he was worth every sacrifice. That evening, Emma sat at the kitchen table with Sarah, who laid out court documents and evidence they had gathered. Papers were scattered like fallen leaves, each one a reminder of the battle ahead. Sarah leaned forward, her tone sharp. "You can't fight him on emotions alone. You need proof, you need strength." Emma's chest tightened, but she nodded. "I'll find a way." Sarah squeezed her hand, her eyes steady. "You're not alone, Emma. I'll be here." For the first time in days, Emma felt a flicker of hope beneath the despair. She looked at Noah coloring quietly at the corner of the table, his small hums grounding her resolve. "He's why I can't quit," she whispered. The storm outside raged on, but inside, determination began to stir. She would face the lies, the pain, and the fear, because giving up was never an option. The knock on the door startled Emma, her heart racing as she opened it to reveal a face she hadn't seen in years. Her estranged brother, Michael, stood there, eyes heavy with regret. "Emma," he said softly, "I heard about the custody case." She froze, memories flooding back, years of silence, of unresolved wounds. Her voice shook. "Why now?" Michael lowered his gaze, his hands trembling. Because I can't watch you go through this alone. Anger rose inside her, but so did a sliver of hope. She stepped back cautiously, allowing him inside. Noah peeked from behind her, curiosity in his wide eyes. Michael knelt, smiling faintly. You must be Noah. Emma's breath caught as she watched the boy's hesitant nod. The room felt charged, old pain colliding with new possibility. For the first time, Emma realized her fight might be bigger than herself. It was about family, broken yet not beyond repair. Michael sat at the table, his hands folded nervously as he explained what he knew. David's been digging into your past, he admitted. He's using everything he can to discredit you. Emma's heart dropped as her brother revealed connections David had exploited. How do you know this? She demanded. Michael's voice cracked. Because I've been watching from a distance. I didn't know how to come back until now. Betrayal and guilt warred in her chest, but his words rang with truth. She leaned back, whispering, You left me when I needed you most. Michael's eyes filled with shame. I know. But I'm here now. Let me help. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Noah's quiet footsteps as he padded into the room. Emma looked at her son, then back at Michael. For the first time, she considered what trusting him again might mean. Emma sat silently as Michael spread papers across the table, evidence he had collected. Bank statements, phone records, and names of people David had manipulated, all laid bare under the dim light. He's been planning this longer than you think, Michael said, his voice low. Emma scanned the documents, her stomach twisting with each revelation. Every page confirmed her fears, but also gave her something she hadn't had before, proof. Her anger burned hotter, but beneath it was relief. You could have stopped him sooner, she muttered, her voice sharp. Michael nodded, shame clear in his eyes. I can't undo the past, but I can help you fight now. Emma looked at Noah playing nearby, his small laughter a fragile reminder of what was at stake. She exhaled slowly, her voice steadier than before. Then we fight, together. The next day, Emma and Michael walked through the courthouse together, their footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Emma felt the weight of eyes on her, whispers trailing in their wake. Michael carried a file of evidence, his posture firm, though nerves flickered in his expression. Are you sure about this? He asked softly. Emma nodded, gripping Noah's hand tighter. I don't have a choice. This is the only way. David stood at the far end of the hallway, his smile smug as he noticed Michael. His eyes narrowed, a flash of recognition cutting through the air like lightning. Emma met his gaze and lifted her chin, unyielding. For the first time, David looked unsettled, his confidence faltering at the sight of her newfound ally. Emma's pulse quickened. Maybe, just maybe, the balance was beginning to shift. That evening, Emma sat across from Michael, their silence filled with years of unspoken pain. The documents lay between them, but their eyes told another story. She whispered, You left me to face everything alone. His voice trembled. I was a coward, Emma. I didn't know how to stay when everything fell apart. Her chest tightened, old wounds rising. Yet for the first time, she saw regret etched clearly in his face. Noah peeked in, sensing the heaviness, and Emma smiled faintly at him. She looked back at Michael, voice steady. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I need your help. Michael nodded, relief breaking across his expression. Then I'll stand with you no matter what it takes. The storm of their past still loomed, but tonight, Emma realized she wasn't entirely alone. Hope flickered, fragile, yet unbreakable. The night before trial, Emma sat at her kitchen table, papers spread across the surface like battle plans. Michael hovered nearby, steadying her with his presence. We have enough to challenge him, he said firmly. Emma's fingers trembled as she flipped through statements, each page a piece of her survival. What if it's not enough, she whispered, the fear in her chest heavy as stone. Michael leaned forward, his eyes sharp. It will be, because the truth is finally on your side. Noah patted him quietly, rubbing his eyes, and Emma quickly folded the papers away. She pulled him into her arms, inhaling the scent of innocence that reminded her why she fought. The storm outside rattled the windows, thunder echoing her heartbeat. She whispered into the silence, "Tomorrow, everything changes." Determination replaced fear, and the mother inside her rose stronger than before. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as Emma entered, Noah's hand clutching hers tightly, until Sarah whisked him to the gallery. She took her seat, her heart pounding as David and his lawyers spread files across their table. The judge's gavel struck, silencing the room. "Proceed." David's lawyer wasted no time, painting Emma as irresponsible, unstable, unfit. Every word cut her open, yet she refused to flinch. She clasped her hands together, whispering silently, "Stay strong." Her lawyer rose, presenting evidence Michael had gathered, each document a counterstrike. David's smirk faltered, his jaw tightening. Emma glanced at him, her eyes fierce. She could feel the tide shifting, not in victory yet, but in possibility. The fight was brutal, each accusation met with proof, each wound met with resolve. The tension peaked when Michael was called to testify. Emma held her breath as he walked to the stand, his posture rigid but his voice steady. He revealed David's manipulations, bank records, and hidden threats Emma never knew. Gasps filled the room, whispers spreading like wildfire. David's face twisted, his composure cracking as he barked objections through his lawyer. The judge silenced him with a sharp glare. Emma's eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but from relief. For the first time, truth stood beside her, unshakable. She gripped the edge of the table, whispering, "We're not alone anymore." Michael's words painted a picture of David's deceit so vividly that even the cold courtroom air seemed to shift. Hope, fragile yet powerful, ignited in Emma's chest. By afternoon, the courtroom erupted in heated exchanges. David rose from his seat, his voice loud and venomous as he hurled accusations directly at Emma. The judge banged his gavel, but the chaos surged. Emma's lawyer countered fiercely, stacking evidence that exposed David's lies one by one. Emma's body shook, not with fear, but with the rush of adrenaline. She stood when addressed, her voice clear despite the tremor inside. "I am not perfect," she admitted, "but I have never failed my son." The words echoed, slicing through the noise like a blade. The gallery fell silent, eyes fixed on her. For once, David's smirk vanished, replaced by a scowl of defeat. Emma exhaled shakily, realizing she had finally found her voice. The verdict hung in the air as the judge shuffled papers. Emma's heart hammered so loudly she could barely hear his words, until they struck her ears like thunder. "Custody is granted to the mother." The room froze, then erupted with murmurs. David slammed his fist against the table, fury consuming him, but Emma barely noticed. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clasped her hands together, whispering, "Thank you." Sarah hugged her tightly from the gallery, while Michael gave a small nod of victory. But Emma knew this wasn't triumph without cost. The scars of betrayal would never fully fade. Still, when Noah ran into her arms, his small voice saying, "We're together, Mom," every wound felt worth it. This was her victory, not against David, but for her son's future. The apartment was quiet that evening, but Emma felt the silence differently, no longer suffocating but fragile with relief. She sat on the couch, watching Noah build towers with his blocks, his laughter echoing like sunlight through broken clouds. Michael lingered near the doorway, giving them space. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, letting the victory sink in, but the ache of what she endured pulsed in her chest. She whispered softly, "We're safe now." Noah looked up, smiling wide, and ran into her arms. She held him tight, burying her face in his curls, breathing deeply. The scars were still there, but so was freedom. The storm had passed, even if its echoes remained. Tonight, they were together, and that was everything. Later that night, Emma stood at the window, staring at the city lights below. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the air crisp and cool. Her reflection stared back at her. Older, stronger, scarred yet unbroken. She thought of David's rage, Sarah's loyalty, Michael's return, and Noah's trust, all woven into this long battle. She placed her hand on the glass, whispering, "I survive." Behind her, Noah's soft snores filled the silence, a reminder of the peace she fought for. She exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting like fog in the morning sun. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, uncertainty didn't terrify her. It beckoned like a horizon waiting to be explored. The following day, Sarah joined Emma in the park, the two friends sitting on a bench while Noah played nearby. The crisp morning air smelled of wet earth, the sky painted in soft grays. Sarah reached over, squeezing Emma's hand. "You did it," she said warmly. Emma's lips trembled into a smile. "We did it," she corrected, gratitude shimmering in her eyes. They watched Noah chase pigeons, his laughter carrying through the breeze. Emma leaned back, her shoulders finally relaxed. For the first time in years, she felt the weight lifting. Sarah's laughter joined Noah's, and Emma realized she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was more than enough. That evening, Emma tucked Noah into bed, smoothing his blanket with gentle hands. He looked up, eyes heavy with sleep, and whispered, "Mom, are we okay now?" Her throat tightened as she kissed his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, we're okay." He clung to her hand until sleep took him, his small breaths steady and calm. Emma lingered at the doorway, watching him, a silent promise etched into her heart. The years of sacrifice, the betrayals, the battles, everything led to this moment of peace. She leaned her head against the doorframe, eyes wet with quiet joy. For once the future felt like something to look forward to, not to fear. The final evening was quiet. Emma stood in the kitchen, gazing out the window as twilight fell. She placed her hand on Noah's bedroom door, a gesture of silent vow. Walking inside, she sat beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He stirred and smiled faintly, mumbling, "I love you, Mom." Tears filled her eyes, but her smile was real, unmasked. She whispered back, "I love you more, always." She leaned against his bed, holding his small hand in hers. The world outside remained uncertain, but within these walls, hope had been restored. Emma closed her eyes, whispering her final vow into the quiet, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting."